the Gundam fight. In order to decide which country would get to rule over the Earth for the next 4 years without having to resort to war, the nations of the future century decided on a tournament. And in this tournament, each country would enter their top-of-the-line mobile fighter, and then they would fight and fight and fight until there was only one left, the winner. And in the early tournaments, the focus was mainly on close-range combat, with martial arts reigning supreme. But then during the 9th Gundam fight, Neo England figured out that, sniping your opponents from a distance is actually a much more effective way of winning a battle. Chapman and his Britain Gundam steamrolled the competition and would continue their winning streak into the 10th and 11th Gundam fight. More and more, other nations began shifting to guns as well in an attempt to emulate their success. But not every country would follow suit, because in the 12th Gundam fight, 2 powerful hand-to-hand Gundams would challenge the status quo. Neo Hong Kong and their Kowloon Gundam, and Neo Japan with a mobile suit whose name time has forgotten, and is now simply referred to as Ulube's Gundam, with Ulube being the pilot. And it is the descendants of this nameless Gundam that we will be focusing on in today's video. Unfortunately for Neo Japan though, while their Gundam did make it into the finals, it would be defeated by Master Asia and his Kowloon Gundam. But this achievement did prove 2 things. For Neo Japan, it proved that they did have a potential winner on their hands, they just needed to develop it a bit more, and for the Gundam fight as a whole, it proved that martial arts was back, resulting in a very interesting roster for the 13th Gundam fight. Some countries decided to stick with the previously successful gun doctrine, some countries jumped fully into the martial arts, and others kinda went with a hybrid of the two. But you know what you should jump into? FX Creations' 2 newest Gundam collaborations, this time featuring the Providence Gundam and the Gouf, both of which feature apparel inspired by their respective mobile suit that is instantly recognizable by a fellow fan, while simply appearing stylish to a normal passerby. For the Providence, the first thing that I got is this water-repellent backpack with their trademark AGS suspension system. This system uses a spring to absorb the shocks from walking, so it's like movable frame technology, but for your back. And this bag is just as big as the Providence's backpack, with room for a lot of things, like a 17-inch laptop, a 15-inch tablet, chargers, high-grade strike Gundam, Gunpla tools, PS Vita, Boltorchika's Children manga, water bottle, and more. And if that still isn't enough, there's also this waist bag with a bunch of different compartments for organized storage. It's lightweight, can be carried on your chest, on your back, or around your waist, and since it closely adheres to the body, it won't swing while you're walking. And finally then, we have the Gouf backpack, which is made for outdoors adventures, just like the real Gouf. As a result, it is lightweight with many compartments for outdoors gear, so in go all of my cycling things, as well as a laptop and a spare pair of shoes. And it's also got multiple rings to attach useful accessories to, or keychains. And since it's made for the outdoors, it's of course also water repellent. You can check out everything that they have on offer with the link down below, and if you use the coupon code Kakarot, you'll also get a 5% discount. So, for Ulube's Gundam itself, we unfortunately don't know a whole lot. We know what it looked like, and that it was equipped with 2 mobile suit-sized Tachis. Other information, like its special moves, is not available at the moment. This machine then would be further developed for the 13th Gundam fight under the leadership of Dr. Mikamura, and this would lead to 2 Gundams being produced. The first was the Shining Gundam, which would be used by Domon Kashu in that 13th Gundam fight, and the second was the Rising Gundam, which was intended to be used by Ulube. who by this time had risen to the rank of Major in the Neo-Japan Army. However, he wouldn't end up using it. In fact, it wouldn't even be used for its original goal, because a new threat had arisen: the Devil Gundam and its Death Army. So the new plan was to have the Shining Gundam tackle the tournament, while the Rising Gundam would be used to fight against the Devil Gundam and friends. A change in plans that also led to a significant change in equipment. Whereas the Shining Gundam was very comparable to Ulube's Gundam, both in shape and weaponry, the Rising Gundam came with heavier armor and heavier weaponry. It comes packing with a pair of Vulcan guns in its head, a pair of machine cannons in the chest, a beam bow that fires beam arrows, Neo-Japan's standard issue machine gun, and a heat naginata. Its superheated blade is powerful enough to slice through super steel like butter, and by rotating it, it can be used to deflect beams, so kinda like a shield. And in addition to these standard weapons, it of course still had what every mobile fighter from GE Gundam had: even more powerful ultimate moves. It has the Rising Finger, which allows it to fire a ball of energy out of its hands, and it has the ultimate bullseye Rising Arrow. Basically, a supercharged version of its regular beam arrows that is powered up even further by having the Rising Gundam enter its high mobility mode. To enter this mode, part of its shoulder armor is removed, revealing the golden parts underneath. And while this does reduce its defensive capabilities, it gives it a boost to its speed and power. Also, your removed armor parts can be used as a shield, and it also has large vents on its face to get rid of the excess heat that is generated by this high mobility mode. And if we go by video game lore, the Rising Gundam also has the Sekiha Love Tenkyoken together with the God Gundam, which is a unit that we'll talk about later on in this video. And I think now is also a good time to point out that the Rising Gundam wasn't piloted by Ulube, but by Rein Mikamura instead. She is the daughter of its designer and the partner of Domon, the pilot of the Shining Gundam and also the God Gundam. So yeah, there's definitely an argument to be made that the Rising Gundam was less of a mobile fighter and more of a traditional mobile suit. But now, let's move on to its more famous sister unit, the Shining Gundam. It is said that it shares many parts with the Rising Gundam, and that its base performance was also roughly equal. But there is of course more of an emphasis on mobility, or to be more precise, the ability to accurately replicate the fighting style of its pilot, Domon Kashu and the School of the Undefeated of the East. As a result, its built-in weapons are rather meager, but it more than makes up for this with its high-speed martial arts and special moves. It comes with 2 head-mounted Vulcan guns and 2 chest-mounted machine cannons, which are the same as the ones installed on the Rising. It has a Shining Shot twin beam gun on each arm, smoke grenades, and finally a pair of beam swords that are mounted on its left hip. One of the swords is bigger than the other, but it's not known if this also correlates with their power. What we do know though is its plethora of ultimate attacks. But before we have a look at those, we first have to go over its various special modes, because these can have an effect on those ultimate attacks. And this is also one of the other big differences with the Rising Gundam. Whereas the Rising Gundam only had the high mobility mode, the Shining Gundam can change into battle mode, super mode, and eventually also the true super mode, also known as the hyper mode. So first up, we have the battle mode. This is a relatively simple transformation where the arm covers pop up and the armor on its face opens up for extra ventilation. This increases its speed and attack, at the cost of its sensors and defense, and also allows the Shining Gundam to use its most iconic special attack, the Shining Finger. To unleash this devastating attack, Domon yells,
"Here I go! Shining Finger!"
Article 1 of the Gundam Fight International Regulations. A unit whose head section has been destroyed is disqualified.
While the hand is coated in a liquid metal, which is then charged with energy, turning it into a shiny greenish color. Most often, the Shining Finger is a physical attack, where Domon grabs and destroys the head of the opposing Gundam, winning him the fight and disqualifying the opponent, but it's also possible to shoot out that stored energy, and it can also somehow hack into an enemy Gundam's computer. A more advanced version of the battle mode then is the Super Mode. In addition to the face guard and the arm guards opening up, various other pieces of armor now also open up. These would reveal additional thrusters, cooling, and other kinds of cool stuff that would all come together to increase the overall performance of the unit by 50%. The drawback, though, is that it couldn't be used for a long time because it placed a huge physical strain on the pilot, and the other drawback was that activating it was unpredictable. Rather than flipping a switch, the Super Mode was activated by Domon's anger, and typically, the Super Mode wouldn't activate until Domon was so angry that he lost control. And this change would also be reflected on himself, with his stray suit changing colors from black to red and his hair standing up. Still, the power of this mode was undeniable, and it allowed Domon to use another special technique, being the Shining Finger Sword. The energy that would normally be used to charge its hand was now used to charge one of its beam swords, making it significantly longer and also significantly more powerful. This is arguably the Shining Gundam's most powerful attack, but it also consumes the most energy.
This hand of mine glows with an awesome power! Its burning grip tells me to defeat you! Take this! My love, my anger, and all of my sorrow!
Finally then, there was the true Super Mode, which fixed the biggest flaw of the regular Super Mode. It turns out that there was a way to achieve the Super Mode without succumbing to your anger. It required a pilot to achieve Meikyo Shisui, which literally translates to clear mirror and still water, and means that the pilot must enter into a serene state of mind. Although this is easier said than done, especially if you're someone as emotional as Domon. But with the help of Schwartz Bruder, he was able to achieve this. And there was also a visual difference with the regular Super Mode. It turned both Domon and his Gundam golden. So because of all of this, this mode was now dubbed the True Super Mode, and it also unlocked a new special attack later on. By focusing all of this new golden energy into the hand of his Gundam, the regular old Shining Finger could now be supercharged into the King of Hearts Shining Finger.
I'm ending this right now with the King of Hearts. Shining Finger!
As a mobile fighter then, the Shining Gundam was also equipped with some standard features found in every mobile fighter. To pilot it, it uses the mobile trace system, where the Gundam mimics the movements of the pilot, and it has a core lander, a hovercraft that can also act as an emergency escape device. Basically, when not in combat, it can be used to travel around the land, and when entering combat, it combines with the Gundam and becomes the backpack, ready to be jettisoned with the pilot if things get too hot. The Rising Gundam has a mostly identical core lander, but because it's used to store the Naginata, it can no longer be used as a hover car. The carrying handle is located on the bottom of the car, and it also blocks some of its thrusters. But back to the Shining Gundam now, with some of its variants. First up, a minor variant that we don't know a whole lot about. The Shining Gundam Urban Combat Type. This color variant appears in the manual of the 1/100 scale and is simply described as such, a color variant. So was this meant as a second Shining Gundam? Were they going to recolor it every time Domon entered the city? And what about its combat performance? Again, they say that it's just a color variant, but I do like to imagine that it's also been tuned a bit to make it better suited for combat in cities. And I also like that this color scheme is very likely a nod to the color scheme of the G3 Gundam with its shades of grey. And it is almost the same story with the Shining Gundam Desert Combat Type. This unit is painted in beige and brown and is made for desert ambushes. Thanks to its new color scheme, the Shining Gundam could hide inside of sand dunes and attack its enemies under the cover of sandstorms. A more drastic variant then was the Shading Gundam. When a certain government official thought that Domon's performance wasn't exactly on par with his expectations, he decided to take matters into his own hands. After all, if Domon won the Gundam Fight Tournament, he would become the ruler of everything. At least for the next 4 years. But if Domon didn't win, he'd get nothing. And so, the development of the Shading Gundam began. It used spare parts of the Shining Gundam and was upgraded in several areas. The weapons remained the same, while the internals were made stronger, causing them to emit energy. And the armor then was overhauled to accommodate this. Not only did it have several gaps where this energy could radiate out, but it was also coated with a special black material that could resist this energy. And instead of a pilot, the Shading Gundam would be controlled by a CPU, which had several pros, but also one big con. On the one hand, this CPU reacted 1.5 times faster than a human, and it had all of the combat data of Domon installed in it, meaning that it couldn't just pull off Domon's moves, but also all of those of the other fighters that Domon had faced up until that point. And for psychological warfare purposes, the CPU manifested itself as Kyoji. The downside, though, was that the CPU couldn't activate the super mode, because this required emotions. So the plan was simple. The Shading Gundam would defeat Domon and his Shining Gundam, the CPU would then be installed into the Shining Gundam, and because for authentication purposes a human pilot was still required, Domon would be turned into a cripple and stuffed into the cockpit while the CPU did all of the fighting, and would simply continue the Gundam Fight Tournament as if nothing had happened. Fortunately for Domon though, Rain caught onto this ploy and they were able to thwart it before it went anywhere. And if you're now having a slight case of deja vu, well, then you're correct. The Shading Gundam appears in a manga retelling of the G Gundam anime, and it basically replaces the Phantoma. And finally, we have the ninjas from comic Bomb Bomb. These machines were intended as the successors to the Bushi and the Nobushi, but would instead become the prototypes for the Shining Gundam and the Rising Gundam. And what is important to note here is that these ninja machines are still classified as mobile suits and not mobile fighters. 7 ninjas were made, with one of them being piloted by Rain, and 5 of them being turned into Ulube's mobile ninja army. It consisted of the Shining Ninja Black, also known as the Ninja Shining, the Shining Ninja White, the Rising Pink, the Rising Yellow, and the Rising Green. And one of their main goals was to defeat the regenerated Devil Gundam, which was regenerating itself as the Zombie Shining. For the Shining Gundam's successor then, Professor Mikamura would develop the God Gundam, also known as the Burning Gundam in the English dub. And not only would all of the data of the Shining Gundam be used in its creation, but the machine would also be fine-tuned specifically for Domon. This resulted in a Gundam that was more powerful in its standard mode than the Shining Gundam in its super mode. So let's delve into all of the systems that made this performance possible. First up, its most striking feature was the energy multiplier system. It is installed in the chest, and it's based on the concept of ki that can be found in Eastern martial arts. Just like ki can be honed, the energy multiplier system can hone the energy of the God Gundam, making it even more powerful. And its second big upgrade was in the form of the Core Lander. In normal mode, it doesn't do a whole lot, but when it enters Hyper mode, which is the God Gundam's version of the Super mode, things get really crazy. The wings unfold into 6 smaller wings and somehow apply a magnetic coating to the entire unit, which then drastically improves its mobility. And this magnetic field is also aided by the smaller of the 2 pairs of V-fins, with the bigger pair of V-fins being the traditional sensor V-fins. Also, the 6 smaller wings are named after a passage from the Diamond Sutra: Dream, Illusion, Bubble, Shadow, Dew, and Lightning. And to increase the performance of the Hyper mode even further, the energy multiplier can open up, allowing it to go full throttle. For weapons then, things were still very similar to the Shining Gundam. Its built-in weapons were rather basic, but it had no shortage of special moves. So for standard weapons, we just have 2 pairs of head-mounted Vulcan guns, a pair of chest-mounted triple-barreled machine guns, a pair of claws on each arm, and 2 God/beam swords, which are an upgraded version of the Shining Gundam's beam swords. But like I just said, the special moves are really where it's at with the God Gundam. And in this video, I'll be mostly going over the anime moves, but also a few of the more notable video game and manga exclusive moves, because a lot of works like to have fun with this unit. And its most famous technique is without a doubt the Bakunetsu God Finger, an upgraded version of the Shining Gundam's Shining Finger. Liquid metal again covers the entire hand, and energy is pumped into it, this time making it glow orange. And to make sure that all of this energy is directed at the enemy, the arm-mounted God Finger protector moves over the back of the hand. Another upgrade is that this liquid metal is applied in a spiral fashion, making it act like a drill, therefore increasing its penetrating power. And this was likely done because the Bakunetsu God Finger wasn't just used to destroy the heads of enemies, but Domon also actively gored them in the abdomen, which was then followed by a finisher move called Heat End. Once inside of the enemy's body, Domon would unleash all of that energy that was stored up in the God Gundam's hand, destroying said enemy from the inside out. Or the Bakunetsu God Finger could also shoot out that energy like some kind of flamethrower. And because this was such an iconic attack, there are also countless variants of it, like the double God Finger with the Noble Gundam or the Nobel Gundam, the Bakunetsu Love God Finger with the Rising Gundam or the Shining Gundam, the double Darkness Finger with the Master Gundam, or the Super Bakunetsu Inazuma Godfinger, which combines the Bakunetsu Godfinger with the Gunbuster's Super Inazuma Kick. My favorite video game thing about the Bakunetsu Godfinger, though, is that in several SD Gundam games, certain characters will have special, personalized dialogue when pulling it off.
これ以上あの人たちに打たせてはなりません。共に轟き叫びましょう。勝利をつかむ。ヒートエンドですわ。
Its second most famous move, then, was the Sekiha Tenkyoken, the ultimate technique of the undefeated of the East, which was definitely not inspired by Dragon Ball Z's Kamehameha. Just like the Super mode was definitely not inspired by the Super Saiyan. But anyways, both hands of the Gundam are put together, energy is charged up like with the Godfinger, and is then released in the form of a fireball. And again, we have a lot of variants. The Bakunetsu Sekiha Tenkyoken, which is simply a more powerful version, the Godfinger Sekiha Tenkyoken, where Domon first uses the Godfinger before firing the fireball and therefore boosting its power, the Sekiha Tenkyo Godfinger, which again consists of Domon using the Godfinger before firing the fireball, but this time it doesn't result in him firing a stronger fireball, but straight up a giant hand, and of course, the Sekiha Love Tenkyoken, where Domon and Rain use the power of love to summon the Burger King. Video game only variants then include the Kyukyoku Sekiha Tenkyoken, a tag team version with Master Asia, and the Sekiha Love Londo Bell Zenin Tenkyoken, which is the Sekiha Love Tenkyoken, but now also powered up by the members of Londo Bell. Other techniques then are the Bakunetsu God Slash, where Domon instead focuses all of his energy into one of his beam swords, the Bunshin Sappo God Shadow, which allows it to create clones of itself, the God Slash Typhoon, where the God Gundam transforms into a Beyblade, the Shokyu Hao Den Eidon, which envelops the God Gundam in energy, turning it into something that really has to be seen to be believed, the Bakunetsu Shuffle Dome Ken, which is a combo attack with the other members of the Shuffle Alliance, and many others. As you can see, the God Gundam really had a special attack for any occasion, even to the point that just throwing a punch is considered a special attack worthy of a special name. I might run towards someone, but the God Gundam uses the God Field Dash to go to someone. But yeah, it goes without saying that the God Gundam was an extremely powerful machine, and a minor variant of it would participate in the 14th Gundam fight as well. The Hyper God Gundam, piloted by Domon's disciple Yugo Kagami. It does have some cosmetic differences with the standard God Gundam, but it seems that its performance is on roughly the same level. Also, at some point in the story, it is disguised as the Samurai Gundam. A totally non-canon variant then was the Gundam Godmaster, which appeared in the Tri-Age arcade game. The story behind this thing is that the God Gundam was infected by DG cells, and that they attempted to transform the God Gundam into a more powerful form, like they had done with the Kowloon Gundam, turning it into the Master Gundam. But because of the strong willpower of Domon, the transformation was left incomplete, resulting in a very unique looking machine. It is still recognizable as the God Gundam, but it's now black with red and blue accents. It's also got a somewhat wrestling-style belt with a G on it, and its single energy multiplier has now become two smaller ones that together form the infinity symbol. And while its mounted weapons remained the same, its special attacks now became evil versions. The Bakunetsu God Slash became the God Devil Slash, the Bakunetsu God Finger became the Horetsu Evil Finger, and its ultimate attack was the Sokyoku God Devil Finger. And that has been all for this somewhat surprising development history of the Shining Gundam and the God Gundam. Being the main machines from G Gundam, I was expecting some crazy things to pop up, but I wasn't expecting ninjas and samurai mobile suits to be amongst those crazy things. But yeah, with G Gundam, anything goes, and that's exactly why we love it. So don't forget to check out FX Creations and use the coupon code Kakarot for a 5% discount. As always, a big thank you to the Patreon supporters. I hope everyone watching has a great day, and I'll see you all next time.